Hello, my name is David Breeden. I am the Senior Minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis. Welcome to Free Thinking Forum. And today I have with me a member of First Unitarian Society, Ruth Agar. Hello, Ruth.
Hi, David.
Very good of you to come in today. And we like to talk about people's faith journeys and how they find Unitarian Universalism and why they stick with it, and then kind of their motivations for what they do in life. So tell me a little bit about your background.
All right. First of all, I'll say that it's a little like my journey here today. I wandered around quite a bit, going some blind alleys and dead ends, but eventually I got to 6900 Winnetka. My husband and I came to Minneapolis in 1953, and through a friend of mine who was also a graduate of the Columbia School of Social Work, meeting with him and his wife, we were invited to the Urban League annual meeting. And after that, we went to the home of friends of theirs, and it was there that we learned about the First Unitarian Society and about Carl Storm, who was then the senior minister. And somehow we got onto that kind of a subject, and Frank and I were encouraged to attend. And so in a sense it was like a blind date. We didn't know them well. We took on faith that it would be an interesting place to go to some Sunday, which we did, and we were hooked. We were hooked. So we've been a member since, actually we joined in 54.
1954.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what were you before? Were you born into a faith tradition?
I come from a multi-religion background. My mother was a Dutch Reform. Her father was a lay minister in the Dutch Reform Church out in western North Dakota, where not many ministers care to come. My father was an Episcopalian. His father had been a missionary and an Episcopalian priest for many years, until he got angry at the Episcopalian church and left it. And became a judge and a lawyer, helping the Native Americans try to win their cases against the United States government. And it was a long, arduous battle. He won one. But anyway, my Aunt Margaret, who lived with us regularly, was a Christian Scientist, as was her mother. So I was exposed to lots of possibilities. And at one point, I was very attracted to the Catholic Church because I loved a young man who was a Catholic. And so I started to attend that, but soon discovered that it had no meaning for me. I also tried the Baha'i when I was in New York, and essentially was a non-religious person. My husband was brought up in the Methodist Church, and his family is very, very strong adherents to that. But when we found Carl Storm and the First Unitarian Society, it really clicked.
Okay, so you had all kinds of religious
I
traditions feeding into your thinking and where you were going in life.
And I should say that it's continued into my family, because my oldest son attended First Unitarian for a while, but he and his wife decided they would go to the Universalist. And then they stopped going there, and now she goes to St. Joan of Arc.
A Catholic, a very liberal Catholic church.
Because of the priest, whom she enjoys immensely, and the music that they have there, and some of the other activities. I have two sons, as I said. Will is pretty much a nun, and Ben searched from the time he was a little boy. He loved icons. He loved crosses that he saw on the hills in the Canary Islands. He was very taken by religion from the time he was little. He eventually married a very dear woman who was a Catholic, but they did not join the Catholic Church. They found the Christian Orthodox much to their liking. And so they have gone there. They're very strong in their faith, but very accepting. And I'm not going to use the word tolerant anymore, thanks to our Hindu friends who came to visit us several Sundays ago. They accept, as I do, every religion, the positive side and the encouraging side. And so that's, and then I have to say that my grandson is leaving on Sunday to journey to Cairo with his mother and father, and there he is going to be wed in a Muslim ceremony to someone he met about 8 years ago when they were both attending the American University in Cairo. So we are a multi-religious family. So, and as I say,
and multicultural too.
Multicultural too, yes.
Well,
yes.
that's the first thing that occurred to me when you were saying that about your childhood. You're much more like the nuns, the NONESs that we have nowadays, the young people who have had so many religious traditions around them that they really respect them all, but often don't choose any.
Exactly.
Or they feel that they can pick and choose rather than being born Lutheran and sticking it with that. So you were a couple of generations ahead.
A couple of decades or generations ahead, yes. And then it takes something that you're just ready, and something kind of kicks you into gear, and you go ahead and start driving the highway.
But the Baha'is too, they also, that part of their tradition is that respect for many different religious traditions, and that's interesting.
And I think I shared this one day at FUS, that when I heard that Cole was going to say he was a Muslim in order to marry Dina, and he is taught world religions in the Waldorf schools. And so I asked him when we were alone, what really are you, Cole? And he said, Grandma, to tell the truth, he said, I'm probably a Taoist humanist.
A Taoist humanist.
So a lot of labels, and it means that we are finding something that has meaning to us, and it isn't so much that it has meaning to other people, it's that it's significant to us.
Right, right. Well, Taoism is, of course, an ancient Chinese religious tradition that probably goes back to shamanism, but probably it's the oldest continuous human religion.
Okay.
And one of the fascinating things about it is that even though you look to nature as a practitioner for meaning and purpose, there's no argument that nature has meaning and purpose, which I think is an interesting distinction going on. That we can learn from nature, but nature is not going to care about us.
I should say too that one of the things I always remember about my grandfather, who was an Episcopalian missionary, is that he was very given to encouraging the Native Americans to practice their religion in the Episcopalian community. And they would have weekly get-togethers in which they would do their drumming and their singing and whatever was meaningful to them. And Grandpa, actually, that was another thing that brought him into disapproval with the bishop in Minneapolis, I believe. And Grandpa was called to explain. And Grandpa said he would not change what he was doing. He felt that that was very significant to the community he was serving. So all in all, he fell away from the Episcopalian teachings.
Well, if there had been more people like your grandpa, the United States would have a very different story in terms of the Native Americans.
I think that's true. I think that's
true.
true.
The lack of respect that is reflected in their history is just appalling.
Yes, the acceptance of them as honest to goodness, decent people just wasn't there. Yeah.
And it's fascinating. There always were those people who said, don't do that. Wait a minute, but they just weren't. They weren't the power.
They weren't listened to. Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So you consider yourself a humanist?
I think I do, yes.
Okay.
That's kind of where I'm at.
All right, okay. So when you came to First Unitarian Society in 1954, and you heard one of the great preachers in our history, Carl Storm, and just what clicked for you? You said something clicked.
I think what clicked was that I was being educated, and I learned so much from him. His talks were exceedingly full of facts and details and philosophy, and they were just thrilling, just thrilling. Having gone to the University of North Dakota, and I don't mean to say negative things about it, but I don't think I really got the kind of education that I then got at FUS and listening to Carl Storm. Yeah.
Well, and one of the traditions at First Unitarian Society, being a religious humanist congregation, has been that, and I think it was John Dietrich who really began that, of using poetry instead of just one particular scripture, using different readings from different traditions, science and literature, and you know, that's,
the acceptance of all of this and seeing how it wove into our own thinking, and that we were part of it and it was part of us, that we were not separate, we were the same. So anyway, it just was really good for us. Yeah.
So you were able to come in and you got educated and met people, and that clicked for you.
We did not attend very regularly for a while. We moved out to Maple Grove, pretty much out in this area. And because we were both working, our weekends were spent with family doing things, and also the usual washing and cleaning and cooking. And so although my husband came in more regularly because he was very active with the art committee, and he did a lot of photography for the society. But then when we moved back into town back in '93, then we started coming, and that's when I became quite active in the Alliance and starting a support group for people who were taking care of loved ones, because my husband had Alzheimer's for many, many years. And we still continue that group at FUS. And then I started volunteering in the office, and at one point, one of the office staff wrote a little poem about getting me a bed in the Dietrich room because I was down there so much. But anyway, it was all fun and I liked it.
Well, I want to get back to all the things you do. But first I wanted to ask about your education. So you got a master in social work.
Yes, in medical social work.
Okay, and what led you into that field originally when you were?
I think it was because I was forced and I'm glad they did that. Columbia would not accept me. I was too young when I applied the first time getting out of undergraduate. I had started undergraduate when I was 16, and I took college in 3 years, so I was only 19, and they said, no, you have to get a little more, something behind your ears. So I worked for a year on an Indian reservation in the middle of North Dakota, and saw firsthand the overwhelming incidence of tuberculosis and the poverty. And I decided that I was going to go into medical social work and then join the Indian Bureau and work on the Indian service, with the Indian service, which I did, which I didn't do actually, because although my thesis was on medical care to the Native Americans and recommendations for its improvement and changes, when I applied for a position, I learned that they at that time had no positions for social workers. They weren't even known. They would accept me as a teacher, but I was not trained as a teacher, and I felt that I would be going under false colors and probably not do a good job. So instead, I fell in love and got married and worked in family and children's service, which was helpful, and then got a job with the VA, and that's how we moved to Minneapolis.
So the Veterans Administration and working with veterans.
Right, exactly.
So, so you saw that firsthand.
Yes.
Again, a population that is often hidden from
the ordinary public until they really see it firsthand or have a member who's in the... I had the good fortune that both my brother and my father served out the First World War in the Hawaiian Islands, and my brother was in the, he was a meteorologist with the Air Corps, and he was in the Caribbean during the Second World War. So they were very safe and sound.
They were safe there.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yeah.
But you saw the effects of,
I did,
of
I
war
did,
on
I did,
people.
I did. And tuberculosis was exceedingly rampant at that time too, and we had 2 full buildings with tuberculosis, and about that time all the drugs came in, the medications that was able to stem the tide, and as a result we have very few, although I think it's coming back, and that's another matter.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
It's scary how all of those, whooping cough is coming back.
Right.
Bed bugs are coming
Right,
back.
right,
It's like,
right.
you know, they checked out somewhere in the mid-20th century and then
Yes.
came back.
Yes, yes.
However that
Yeah,
happened. Mostly just not watching the store,
Yeah,
I'm afraid.
yeah.
It's,
I do need to say that I think that although my children have not become Unitarians, I think there's still a possibility that 1 or 2 might. One of my granddaughters has visited the Unitarian Society in New York City, and she said she found it very interesting, but she said they were very lousy singers.
Uh-oh. Well, you know, the joke there is that we're terrible singers because we have to look to see about the words coming up.
I
if
told
we
her
agree,
that. I told her that. Read the lyrics, and you'll see why we don't pay too much attention to the notes.
Right,
Right, yeah.
right. Well, you mentioned kind of your motivation then in life, and you are one of the most active people of any age at First Unitarian Society.
You think so? Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I happen to know that you wrote a personal mission statement, which most of us don't. So tell us a little about that.
Well, a good Unitarian friend of mine started a mission seekers group, and we met once a year, and each year one of the members would bring a mission statement in which they would put in what they wanted their life to represent, or perhaps be, or already was. And eventually it came my time, and I'd already heard lovely, lovely statements, some of them quite long, maybe as long as 3 pages, and I realized after I'd tried to do something lengthy that I just wasn't that type. So I came up with this mission statement, and it is to live, love, and laugh, and to exit full of curiosity.
That's a wonderful statement. I have to say that when I was in college, I discovered Unitarian Universalism for the first time. I discovered it because my English professor mentioned that Thoreau and Emerson were Unitarians and that they were still around, actually, which I would have assumed they weren't. They're sort of gone like the Pilgrims or something.
Yeah.
And the first thing that ever struck me about visiting a group, and it was a small humanist group, was just how interested in living the older people were. And of course I was about 22 at the time.
Okay.
And so I thought old people were sour and kind of prune-faced and didn't care about anything because they had learned everything and were totally set in their ways.
Yes.
And I suddenly saw these 70 and 80-year-olds who were alive and laughing, and they were doing things out in the world.
Yes. Well, I, for whatever reason, I have a fairly amiable and disposition. And I enjoy things. Things do, like this morning when Bill called me and asked me if I could come. Ordinarily, all afternoon I would be at a Spanish class. That's my sacred time. I've been studying it for 13, 15, 18 years, I don't know. I don't have a gift, but I love it, and I've gotten a lot better. So every Monday afternoon, I meet with Senor Felino de la Peña, and we are a group of about 7, and we have homework, and we talk, and we eat together, and we're there for easily 3 hours or more.
So you are keeping your brain alive.
I'm trying to. I'm trying to.
Learning a new language, and which people say, I can't do that. I can't remember anything anymore. But you're keeping your mind flexible.
Yeah.
Well, you're also just a born helper in the world, of helping people. You're a member of our Caring Circles, which is a group that very consciously sets out to help people in our congregation with all kinds of life issues. We were discussing before we started taping about someone we know whose father is very ill.
Yes.
And what motivates you there?
I don't. It must be in the genes, because it's something I do not. I don't do it because I have to. I do it because as soon as I hear it's needed, my adrenaline starts coming, and I feel like I need to get in and help out in any way I can. So I can't take any credit for it. It's just there.
Well, but it seems to me that your philosophy of life is about service, is about helping other human beings, and
I saw that though in my mother and father and my grandparents. You know, we lived through the Depression. I can remember my father telling me that one night, on a very cold night, he heard somebody at the window that overlooked my bed, where my head was on the pillow, and he got up and looked into my room, and there was someone from the Standing Rock Indian Reservation, a Native American, was trying to crawl inside the window because he had come to Elgin, had imbibed a bit too much, and he knew that Ralph Bede, the son of Dr. Aaron McGaffey Bede, lived across the street, and so he was trying to get into the house. So Dad took him up to the hotel and got him a room, and I've always remembered that story. I didn't wake up. I think I would have been terrified if I'd seen a face come in through the window, but anyway, it's things like that. And I know that Dad did much of his law work pro bono because people did not have money. He would take barter instead. We got lots of meat, eggs, cream, that sort of thing for what he did instead.
So it was, and North Dakota is not the most conducive climate to
No.
survival anyway, is it? So,
No, and even with their riches now, they're still having trouble surviving, I think.
it still gets cold there.
It does, it does.
Anyway,
but we're in the Banana Belt. That little area is called the Banana Belt of North Dakota. We get the Chinook winds coming through there.
I did not know North Dakota had one of those.
Yes, we do.
So with your mission statement, you you want to just continue laughing and thinking and and living your life, and I can't imagine a better way to keep going. After all, it's so easy to. You lost your husband, and of course Alzheimer's is not easy.
No, I tell people, if it works, that Frank was ill for almost 19 years with the Alzheimer's, but he had a fantastic sense of humor. And even in his later stages, we could laugh about things. And when he did things that were really, really off the grid, they were, as I've told people, it was like a Monty Python film. They were so unexpected, but still in character with his wicked sense of humor that we would dissolve in laughter. So it wasn't bad at all.
And another group you mentioned was the caregivers group.
Yes.
And that meets at First Unitarian Society.
Yes.
And what do you do there?
Well, that's under the auspice of the Alzheimer's Association. And so it's open to anyone in the community who would like to come on a Tuesday morning and share concerns, share tears, laugh with us, and tell funny jokes and that sort of thing, but all related to the overwhelming experience and journey they're on caring for a loved one. I might also say I'm on the board of the Funeral Consumers Alliance of Minnesota, in which we advocate for people to do the things that they need to do to get ready for exiting, and so that their loved ones are not left wondering and being overwhelmed with what needs to be done. It's a good plan.
Well, as a minister, I often run into people who families who they have no idea what their loved one would have wanted, and suddenly they have to start making it up at exactly the time they don't need to be thinking about these things. It isn't morbid to plan ahead a little bit, is it?
No. The Funeral Consumers Alliance of America now has a booklet, and we're selling it down in the bookstore, and it's things to do to get ready. And there are cartoons by Edward Gorky in it. Now, some people might be
a little dark.
a little dark.
Dark
a
humor,
little dark,
huh?
yes. But apparently that's kind of one of the ways to go, and it fits me and fits a lot of people, I think.
Okay, so just a little bit of gallows humor is will help with the situation.
It does.
And facing the reality of life
Exactly.
is not a bad idea, after all.
And it's done with love and kindness and cherishing and
Well, and if you don't, you're really putting a burden on the very people who love you and care about
and
you at the time when they don't need it.
Exactly.
And,
yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you meet for the caregivers group, I know that Alzheimer's, part of it is sometimes called the long goodbye, and that people slowly slip away.
Yes.
And how do you talk to people about dealing with that? Is it?
It's really letting them talk to us and share what they're going through, and almost always one of us, either myself or Lee Schurz, who's a co-leader, and or another person attending will have faced that. For example, very early on, people who are losing their ability to handle their affairs become very upset about finances. And in a year or two, that has dropped away, and then it's another loss of cognitive functioning. So it's a stepping ladder going downward, and we've all been through it and we can share, but mainly we listen. And there is a lot of laughter though, because we talked last time about how some of our families that are in nursing homes have grown very attached to someone other than a family member, and how that's kind of something to sit back and note, and yet it comes to be a real joy too, because it makes them happy and more spontaneous, and it works out all the way around.
So if I'm in that situation, I can reach out and talk with people and learn what's normal and how it works.
Yes.
And so things are not quite as scary then.
And we can talk about what might be coming and what they might be able to do. We've also learned to be experts in telling little white lies because they don't remember, and it's really to comfort them.
Right. They don't need correction at this point.
No, and we deal with where they are rather than trying to change or make them better. It's just accepting them as they are. Yes.
Well, Ruth Agar, you get my Humanist of the Year award every year for all the things that you do to help people in our community. It's just amazing, but you get something back too. And you're alive and well, and have a smile on your face every time I see you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Thanks
your
so
words.
much for coming in today.
Welcome.
I'm David Breeden. I'm the Senior Minister at First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis. Thanks so much for joining us today.